Hi everyone, Jen here from the Insync marketing team. This is our third video on the business risk scenario model that the team here at Insync have been using for more than a decade to help clients manage risks in major projects, in business initiatives, strategies, and even on just a business as usual basis. If you're new to the series, please take a look at the earlier clips that give an outline on what the tool is and how to populate it. Today I'm talking to Joe McDavid again, who's Principal of Risk Consulting at Insync, about how to use the model.
Thanks, Jen. Hopefully you've all found the outline of the model and the process to build it out of use. In fact, we often find a lot of the value is in building out these models. It drives conversations that leadership teams may not have been having often enough. However, the rubber really hits the road when you start to use the model to drive action and decision making.
Agreed. So firstly, a quick recap. We talked earlier about the model being built out on a number of key scenarios that could impact what you're doing. So a major project, a transaction, or even just managing your business through uncertainty, along with a number of metrics that support the assessment of those scenarios. So essentially, whether they are more or less likely to be happening, and a trigger point for each scenario, a pre-agreed point where action needs to be taken. So with that all in place, what's next?
Once all that's in place, it's time to use the business risk scenario model to actually support ongoing decision making and action. The first step is to measure the data you agreed that you would in the metrics. Gather that data on a regular basis and use it to determine how the overall scenario ratings have moved over time.
That sounds quite subjective. Is that really how you do it?
Well, again, it really depends on the quality of the data you have underlying the model and of course, your level of alignment as a leadership team. In some scenarios, it'll be quite objective and there won't be a lot of debate. But in other scenarios, the data's a key input. There may be some level of flexibility in the overall assessment of the rating.
Okay, so once you've measured the current state, what's next?
Once you know where you're at, it's clearly important to work out where you're at against your pre-agreed trigger points. There are two ways you need to do this. Firstly, for each of the scenarios, are you above or below the trigger? And then overall, across all scenarios, giving you some insight as to how your overall project is going.
And then once you've worked out your actual versus trigger points, it's on to action planning.
That's right.
One thing you might find though is that you've got more than one scenario outside of tolerance, and the actions to address one might cause issues with the other.
Yes, Jen, and that's a really good point. It illustrates why this is a model that helps decision making rather than a mechanical process to work out the single best action. We know in many cases what will help manage one risk, maybe more robust controls over vendor performance delivery. It could cause issues in others, such as cost, engagement, supply chain flexibility. And that's the point of the model, to help flesh out what the trade-offs are that we need to make in order to make good risk-based decisions. And you'll also remember the triggers have all been said earlier. We find this is a useful tool to call out the challenges with actions to fix one problem that may cause others.
So once that's done, where do the actions and escalations go? Is there another process or tool for this?
I hope not. Once the model's updated, decisions are made and action agreed, we typically like to rely on existing action tracking and governance practices to drive execution. If they're robust, then adding new processes is often distracting. So once you've updated the model, it's really an ongoing cycle of reporting, assessment, action in your usual management cycle.
So set and forget?
To some extent, but like any useful tool, it's going to require ongoing tuning and assessment. Often some triggers for review would be a re-baseline of plans and budgets, consistent operation outside or too far inside your triggers, or changes in strategy.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate the overview. The next session, we're going to work through some of the questions we've received so far from people who've been watching and been in contact with us. So if you're watching now and you've got a question, please send it in or post it on LinkedIn, and we'll address them in the next session.
Yep, thanks. And I'm looking forward to it and looking forward to hearing any questions.